Mario Cristobal doesn't care if the Florida State Seminoles are 1-6, 7-0, or 0-60. This is definitely not a trap game for the Miami Hurricanes.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
3 days away from game day, I am Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. 7 p.m. kickoff, Hard Rock Stadium this Saturday. Miami Hurricanes will look for a little revenge against the Florida State Seminoles this weekend. We're answering questions on this episode from the Locked On Canes insiders. We'll talk about the recruiting visits. The list is absolutely loaded. And it's only Wednesday, so there is a chance that more recruits could decide to visit within the next 3 days. We'll talk about where Cam Ward is going to stand in University of Miami history as possibly the greatest quarterback to ever put on the U on his helmet. And let's talk about this FSU game this weekend, because we get a question from Stephen C., who says, would you consider this Florida State game a quote-unquote trap game? Now, a trap game is a game that, a superior team could lose because they're overlooking an inferior opponent or possibly already looking past that opponent to the next game. Stephen, there is not a chance in hell of that happening here. Miami Hurricanes are preparing for the Florida State Seminoles as if they are 7-0. Every player who has been on this Hurricanes team for at least one previous year has lost to Florida State. Those who were on the Hurricanes in 2022, last time Florida State visited Hard Rock Stadium, lost to that team 45-3 at home. This is a chance for revenge. And obviously, even the players who weren't on the team last year, like your starting quarterback, it's still personal for Ward. Ward may not have been here in 2023, 2022, 2021. We lost to Florida State that year as well. It's a 3-game losing skid. But believe me, Ward is going to take on that spirit of vengeance this week, and he's going to take that game seriously. And then, of course, you've got all the players on Miami's roster who are from the state of Florida, which is a high percentage. They grew up playing with or against many of the players who are on Florida State's roster. And chances are, if you grew up in the state of Florida, you probably picked a side in that rivalry, and this is going to ring true to you. And, oh, yeah, this is one of the premier rivalries in all of college football. Coach Cristobal, who has coached at Miami previously, played at Miami late 80s, early 90s, won 2 national championships here. He understands what this rivalry means. He's been a part of it in so many different ways. And Cristobal said this week at his Monday news conference that you'd be surprised how aware his players are of the history and the significance of this rivalry. Even though nobody on this roster was alive during wide right 1 and wide right 2, and probably not even wide right 3 and wide left, but they are aware of the significance. They have been educated on it. So yeah, Miami's not looking past Florida State. They could be the worst football team in the entire world, and Miami would not be looking past them. It's a chance to win a rivalry game. It's a chance of revenge for the last 3 years. So as fans, let's pack the rock and give them hell. We get this comment from Hurricane George, who says, CMC, Coach Mario Cristobal, he sounded like Jimmy Johnson. Quote, the other team's objective is to stop your team. Says, it sounds like CMC is about to unleash everything on Saturday, impress the recruits and the fan base. So, yeah, Cristobal, Gio Milian, our guy, posted a video of Cristobal's news conference from 2 years ago, because 2 years ago was when Florida State came down to Hard Rock Stadium, and they not only did they pummel and embarrass Miami, they ran up the score, which is their right to do so. I I'm never one of those soft college football fans who's like, how dare you run up the score on my team? I mean, listen, it's our job to stop them from scoring. Now, this week, it's their job to stop us from scoring. But after that 45-3 embarrassment 2 years ago, Mario Cristobal said, like, hey, he wasn't upset about them running up the score. He says someday the shoe is going to be on the other foot, and we'll see. I'm not guaranteeing anything for Saturday, but if that shoe is on the other foot, if I were CMC, I would not hesitate to score as many points as I possibly can in that game. Oh, we get this one from our guy Ricky Bobby. This is a great question, and it's become topical. I know Dan Levitard was even talking about this on his show this week. Is Cam Ward the best quarterback ever? Ricky asks, and where would he rank if not? I'm going to say yes. Cam Ward is the best. Doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the greatest. That still is up for grabs, though. But I will say that Cam Ward is the best University of Miami quarterback ever, and soon his stats are going to say so. Cam Ward, he's on the verge of breaking Steve Walsh's single-season touchdown record of 29. Ward currently has 24 touchdown passes with 5 regular season games left in postseason play. So he's going to break that record. He's also going to break Bernie Kosar's single season passing yards record, which was 3,600 and change. Ward is about 1,100 shy of that one right now, currently at 2,538 passing yards on the year. So he's going to have the stats to back it up, Ward. And it's not just the stats. Miami Hurricanes have literally never had a quarterback with this many tools and this much athleticism. And Ward is going to be a top 5 draft pick in the NFL, along with possibly a Heisman Trophy winner. Now, Miami has had 2 of those in the past, but Ward has a chance of joining that club. So we've never had one. We've never had a quarterback who's got this many tools like Cam Ward does. And if not Cam Ward, if we're talking about best, most talented, you can make arguments for someone like Vinny Testaverde. But Vinny, as great as he was, didn't stand out against the rest of the nation like I believe Cam Ward does. Also, let's not confuse best quarterback ever with greatest quarterback ever, because, of course, Miami has had so many greats over the years who have left legacies of national titles, like Bernie Kosar, Jim Kelly. Don't want to forget Jim Kelly, Steve Walsh, Gino Torretta, Ken Dorsey, guys who had long careers. Many of them won titles. I know Jim Kelly didn't, but he laid the foundation for Bernie to win a title. So I would love to see Ward join that club as well. I'd love to see him win a championship, maybe win a Heisman Trophy to get himself into that conversation as well. But this dude, I believe, is the best we've ever had, because, yes, I know that over the years, college football has changed. Teams don't play defense the way that they used to back in the 80s and 90s, but Cam Ward is on track to put up the type of numbers that Joe Burrow put up in 2019. In fact, Ward, through 7 games, is actually on a higher pace in terms of passing yardage than what Burrow was on in that great 2019 season. Miami has never had this prolific of a quarterback. So the long and the short of it is, whether you agree or disagree that Cam Ward is the best quarterback to ever put on this Miami uniform, I believe he is, but let's appreciate the fact that we've got a great one. He's the best quarterback in the country right now. Let's enjoy every second of it, because it's a sweet ride, but it's a short ride because he's off to the NFL next year. So hopefully Cam, for the next 5+ games, can continue the sort of pace that he's on, because he's been nothing short of incredible as a Miami Hurricane so far. Oh, folks, we got more questions coming in from the Locked On Canes insiders. If you want to become an insider, click the link in the show description below. Try it free for 14 days. I give you guys show updates, breaking news, recruiting scoops, one-on-one questions and answers. And if you like it, after 2 weeks, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. So $4.99 a month if you want to opt in. If you don't want to opt in, that's fine. Try it free for 2 weeks. Click that link in the show description below. When we come back, here's what we're seeing so far, or what we're expecting to see from the Miami recruiting section for this Florida State game, because it's going to be loaded. There are some opportunities for big-time flips, and yeah, you want to keep it locked right here, because we're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, I know that LinkedIn Jobs works because I have found jobs on LinkedIn before. And if you're a small business owner, when you're hiring, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. Because in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses, by the way, use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making this Wednesday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. I co-host that show with Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. We take you around the conference. You know, it's been a lot of fun games in the ACC this year, including what Miami's been up to. Clemson, SMU, undefeated in the conference. Pitt Panthers are still undefeated. We talk about all of that and more on Locked On ACC. Much like this show, it's available free wherever you get your podcasts, and it's available free on YouTube. We get a question from Mr. Valentine who says, hey, man, this has been one season. This season has been one to remember so far. I've experienced all kinds of emotions, excitement, concern, amazement, and overall pissed offness. He says that's a made up word. I like it, though. How confident are you that our defense can tighten up a pinch so we aren't on the verge of having a heart attack every freaking week? Thank you from Mr. Valentine. Well, okay, first of all, you don't have too many prolific offenses left on your schedule for what that's worth, because Louisville, who their offense scored essentially 31 points against us. One of their touchdowns was a special teams touchdown where we should have done much better, and the other was a very short field after a turnover where they scored a touchdown. But Louisville has one of the top offenses in the ACC. You're really the only other offense, and I know Miami also has struggled against not as great offenses like Cal, but hear me out, okay? I think really the only other on paper prolific offense you have left in the regular season is Syracuse. Kyle McCord has been putting up big numbers for them. That's the final game of the year on the road. Now, if you want to talk about trap games, if Miami's 11-0 headed into that one, that could be maybe considered a trap game. That's a good offense there. And, if you do see either Clemson or SMU in the ACC championship game, you're going to face a really good offense there. But you're not going to face too many more offenses like Louisville. There's definitely urgency on the defensive side of the football. Mario said that this week. And I also think that there are some personnel tweaks that could be made. I would like to see, and I expect to see, a lot more playing time from Zaquan Patterson. It's been limited reps for the true freshman safety, but he's graded out very well every time he's been on the field, including this past week, where playing 20 snaps, Patterson was the highest rated defender on the field, according to Pro Football Focus. So give Zaquan Patterson some more playing time. I wonder if, we see a guy like O.J. Frederick, who's done well this year, going to continue to get better and more comfortable as a true freshman. And at some point, we think and we hope, fingers crossed, because Cristobal teased this on Monday, we could see Damari Brown make a return for the back end of the year. So you know what? I mentioned that the next really prolific offense you're going to see would be Syracuse. 12th game of the season, maybe Damari Brown, who played really well against Florida before he got injured, he might be back for that game, because it's been a lot of the issues have been in the defensive secondary. For me, the linebacker play, I think Kiko is a lot better than what he's shown on film for the past couple of games. So I expect that to kind of correct itself. Wes Basaint has played really well. And Miami's defensive line, the good news is, even when your back end is struggling, you still have a front line that's able to create pressure and able to create sacks. Ruben Bain, he led the entire country in quarterback pressures last week with 10. I mean, Simeon Barrow has been playing out of his bleeping mind right now. So, I like you said, I do believe that there are reasons why Miami's defense can play better. And, you've got an opportunity. It's worth noting this week, Florida State's offense, they have been completely inept this year. Haven't been protecting their quarterbacks. Their quarterback situation is an unmitigating disaster where you're relying on, Brock Glenn, who's got more career interceptions than touchdown passes as a redshirt freshman. Luke Kromenhoek is the other quarterback who's a true freshman who's probably going to get some playing time in this one. He still has a bit of a deer in the headlights going on, and he's not faced a pass rush like he's about to face against Miami. So you've got a situation that should play in Miami's favor defensively this week. So let's hope we have a good defense, because if they give up like 4 touchdowns to Florida State, whose offense can't score their way out of a paper bag, then you're looking at some problems moving forward. But we'll see how the defense bounces back this week. Great question. We get this question from the 502. It says, I'd love to know what's the overall feel in Miami's locker room. I can't exactly answer that because, we don't have access to the locker room. But in terms of you may mean locker room is what's the overall spirit of the team. Seem to be strong leadership there. Seems to be a lot of harmony. The guys get along and the guys are focused, right? You've got hard workers like Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo setting the tone for the team, Wesley Basaint and Kiko Maui Noah, who work extremely hard. So it seems like a really good locker room. All right, let's get to this recruiting list, okay? We get this question from our guy, Delane, who's an everydayer. Delane, we love you. Who can we expect to be at the game recruitment-wise? Also, who seems most likely for us to flip from that Steve Wiltfong list? All right, so huge shout out and credit to the Inside the U 24/7 Sports, Gabby Urrutia, his team, because they have a list of and this is a list that names could be added onto it between now and Saturday. But as of right now, here's who they're expecting to be at the game. We'll hold off on the 2026s just so I don't throw too many names at you guys. We'll focus on 2025s, including guys who are already verbally committed to Miami, and don't take them for granted because you need to keep them locked in and keep showing them the love. So guys who are already committed to Miami who are going to be at the game: running back Gerard Pringle, wide receiver Dalen Upshaw. I love that he's coming because I know there's been some talk about Auburn trying to flip Upshaw. Want to keep him locked in. Wide receiver Joshua Moore, who just flipped from Florida a couple of weeks ago. Tight end Brock Schott and tight end Luca Gilbert. Huge fan. And by the way, both of those guys, they are going to continue that tight end U tradition at Miami once they get here. Cornerback Jabori Antoine is going to be at the game. He seems really excited about it. He's posting a lot about it on social media. Edge rusher Herbert Scroggins, who I think is one of the more underrated players in this class. I'm glad he's going to be here. Safety Hilton Drake Stubbs. Cornerback Chris Ewald, offensive lineman Jaden Wilkerson, linebacker Gavin Nix, linebacker Ezekiel Marcelin, defensive back Amari Wallace, offensive lineman S.J. Alofai Tuli, offensive lineman Max Buchanan, offensive lineman Demetrius Campbell, Tekalen Mew, defensive lineman Micah Newton, defensive lineman Dante Simpson, and defensive backs Bryce Fitzgerald and Amari Wallace will be at the game. So those are the guys who are already verbally committed to Miami. Let's talk about the ones who aren't, okay? Because here's what 24/7 Sports has on their list right now. We've talked about this one already a couple times this week, but 5-star cornerback DJ Pickett, top player in the state of Florida, top corner in the entire class, 6'4", freak athlete corner, committed to LSU. DJ is going to be at the game. And this is one Steve Wiltfong from On3 has talked a lot about DJ Pickett this week, that he feels that Miami could definitely be a threat to flip DJ from LSU. And DJ, of course, has, he's a Florida, an in-state guy in the Tampa area, but in-state, and he's got the family ties to Miami. His uncle played for Miami. His cousin currently plays for Miami. So there's the heartstrings getting tugged a little bit. And in the words of Wiltfong, he doesn't even think Miami's really turned up the gas yet for Pickett. That we're still, what are we, about a month and a half away from the national signing period, that he feels Miami hasn't even put their foot down on the gas yet. So let's watch out for DJ Pickett. Here's another flip candidate and another top defensive back, which is what Miami needs a lot of in this class, DBs. Top 24/7 cornerback, 4-star Ben Hanks Jr., who's a Florida commit and a Florida legacy. Now, Florida, I know Florida just got a big win. So maybe Billy Napier's job security is a little bit better. Is he still in limbo? But Miami is really trying, as they did with Joshua Moore. Miami's working hard with Ben Hanks Jr. to try to flip him. He's going to be at the game. Top edge rusher Hayden Lowe, who's a USC commit. Now, he's not only is a USC commit, he's from California, but he loves Jason Taylor. And so maybe there's an opportunity there. Four-star athlete, Duke commit Bradley Gompers, who I think projects as a linebacker at the next level. He's going to be at the game. Apparently, Miami's really liking him, that he's rising up Miami's board from what I hear. Top linebacker TJ Alford, who's an Ohio State commit, is going to be at the game. Another Ohio State commit, defensive lineman Jarquez Carter, who Miami heavily recruited and is continuing to do so even before and after he committed to Ohio State. Cornerback Shamar Arno, USC commit. Again, we're going after a lot of cornerbacks. And uncommitted linebacker Kellen Wiley, Wiley, by the way, we recently saw Gabby at 24/7 dropping a crystal ball, and others have dropped crystal balls and RPM predictions for Miami to land Kellen Wiley. Excellent four-star linebacker out of Armwood High School, same high school as Gerard Pringle. So I'm sure Pringle is helping Miami recruit Wiley, and he's down to a top 10, which Miami is in. But a lot of people think they let's just say a lot of people like where Miami stands with Kellen Wiley. So I like that idea. All right, we'll talk about when we come back, a player. There's been some rumors that this player would be coming to the game. I don't think he's going to. At least that's what people are saying now. We'll talk about one that it looks like Miami will not flip, and we'll answer more of you guys' questions. Because, folks, it's Florida State week. It's hate week. It's rivalry week, and we're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, if you look at the FanDuel numbers for this game, America's #1 sportsbook, I hope you guys have been placing your wagers on FanDuel. Miami Hurricanes are 20.5-point favorites at home against the Seminoles. Minus 1,600 on the money line. So not a lot of value on the money line. The over-under is 54.5. Now, we'll see how much Florida State scores. If you've been betting overs on Miami games the past few weeks, you've been winning a lot of money on FanDuel. So you want to check out all of those numbers. And NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tampa Lou says, hey, what are our biggest needs recruiting-wise going into next year based on our current commits? Do you think our starting quarterback is on our roster? He says, well, as far as like biggest needs, with what we're seeing on the field, defensive back, you got to load up your defensive backfield in the next couple of recruiting cycles, and out of the names we did mention, defensive back recruits, we mentioned this on the show yesterday, not yet today. Miami's already, trying to land defensive backs in the 2026 class, like Camden Portis, who Miami received a crystal ball prediction for, son of Clinton Portis, really good 4-star corner from the class of 2026. So it's defensive back. As far as current next year's quarterback being on the roster, it's too soon to say. I think we're going to learn a lot more about that depending on how Miami approaches the upcoming transfer portal, if they look for another short-term solution. But I will say the development of Emory Williams has been astounding. We saw signs of it in practices, especially fall practice. Once he was fully recovered from the broken arm, Emory has really started to stand out. When he's gotten a little bit of relief time this season, and he's gonna preserve the red shirt this year, but he has gotten a little time this year. He's looked really good. So don't be shocked if it's Emory Williams. Obviously, Reese Poffenbarger is going to get a chance to compete for that as well. Judd Anderson might be one for the future. I just don't think next year, maybe the year after, but he's developing pretty nicely. And then in a couple of years, Luke Nickel, he's going to be arriving as an early enrollee this January. Nickel, I think his high school team is still undefeated, Milton, and Nickel's been tearing it up. Like, he's been having an unbelievable senior high school season. So a couple years down the road, that he might be the next great, man. Luke Nickel has been doing so well in high school. So in terms of like whether the current starting QB is on the roster right now, it's so we got more than five games plus postseason left. I'm just going to enjoy Cam Ward right now, and I'll worry about the future later. But I appreciate the question. We get this one from the 786 who says, hey, who would be the bigger recruiting flip? Would it be Solomon Thomas, the 5-star offensive lineman who's committed to Florida State, or Ben Hanks, the 4-star corner who's committed to Florida? Now, okay, I get temper your I don't have any expectation at this point for Solomon Thomas, because this is what Gabby at 24/7 said about him last night. He said, I feel certain that Solomon Thomas is not going to visit Miami this weekend. There was some buzz that maybe Thomas could be a visitor. He's committed to Florida State. So even if he were to come to the game, you could spin it as like, oh, I'm here to, watch the Seminoles. But apparently he's not going to be visiting this week. Gabby says, I don't believe he ever was. He also says, I was assured that there has not been communication with Thomas. And it was made clear once again this morning, Miami is not pursuing Solomon Thomas, and he's not visiting. So I think that answers your question in an indirect way. Ben Hanks, let's try to flip that one. That would be a big flip, because Hanks is an excellent player at an important area of need for next year. By the way, at the time that I'm saying this, Miami has not officially revealed which uniforms they're going to be wearing on Saturday night. There have been some clues that they could be busting out the all-black Miami Knights. There have been some clues for that. A lot of social media clues, and also some pictures that came out of practice where apparently Miami's wearing the black practice unis, which again seems like a clue that they could be wearing the all-black this weekend. However, I saw a social media post that came from the U that asked fans to wear orange. So I don't know. So we're getting conflicting information here. But this one comes in from the 719 area code that says, Dono, is Miami trying to lose? I do not want us wearing the all-black uniform. So he must be superstitious like me. Miami there were different uniforms, but they wore all-black uniforms against Georgia Tech last year. We saw how that turned out. Now, going back to 2017, Miami wore all-black uniforms against Virginia Tech in a night game, and they beat the snot out of the Hokies. So, I mean, you're a little bit worried about this because the last time they wore black, they didn't win. But again, I don't know. There's been conflicting information. It seems like they could bust out the all-blacks this week. We're going to find out. Maybe later today they'll make an official announcement. But, let's just hope that this team is completely different from the teams of years past, and they're not going to fall into a trap of superstition wearing, uniform colors where they don't always win games. This is a good question from Ponce, who says, hey, Dono, for the next 2 weeks, Clemson is going to be playing opponents that Miami has already played. I think that these head-to-head matchups may be our best opportunity to get to evaluate how our team stacks up against the Tigers. Your thoughts? Listen, every football game is different. So, the common opponent math doesn't always work out, but I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't curious, right? Because this week, or next week, actually, because they've got a bye week this week, but November 2nd, after their bye week, Clemson's going to take on Louisville. So, if they hold Louisville to like 10 points, I'm going to be, oh my gosh, maybe our defense is as bad as people try to say it is. If they get into a shootout with Louisville, then it's going to feel pretty familiar to us. And then the following week, Clemson's got Virginia Tech on the road. Virginia Tech, they've gotten better as the season has gone on. They just obliterated Boston College. Home games at Virginia Tech are always difficult. Miami beat them at Hard Rock. Clemson's got to go to Blacksburg. Would not surprise me if Virginia Tech pulls off that upset at home. And if they don't, I'm going to have even more respect for Clemson, because it's worth noting on Clemson, their schedule's not been that difficult outside of the Georgia game, where they got completely outclassed by, the only really good team on their schedule so far. But with that said, I admit Clemson has looked excellent since that Georgia game. Their offense looks like a Garrett Riley offense. It didn't the first week. Their defense has been consistently good, unlike ours. So, I'm curious to watch them play those common opponents. I'm with you on that. Oh, man. All right, folks, there's, as usual, a lot of questions we haven't gotten to, but we'll answer more later this week. Plus, I'm going to be doing a mailbag column for canescounty.com, and some of the questions we didn't use on the episode today, I'm going to answer them in written form at Canes County later this week. And speaking of Canes County, the publisher at Canes County, Marcus Benjamin, is going to be joining us tomorrow. We'll talk more about the recruiting angle. We'll get Marcus's thoughts on the matchups against Florida State. And again, like, I want to emphasize this, bad as Florida State is, you expect them to probably play their best game of the season against Miami, given the rivalry. But on the Miami side, this is not a trap game. Miami will be treating Florida State as if they are 7-0. Let's keep that 1-0 mentality going for the rest of the week. Go 1-0 this week. Focus on next week when next week gets here. We'll talk to you guys again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel. If you listen to the audio version, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.